My family always called me the quiet one. But honestly, it wasn't because I was shy or anything. I learned early on that speaking up just cost me more than it was worth. My dad was all about control. Mom just ignored whatever didn't fit her story. My brother? He moved through it all by doing exactly what they wanted, no questions. That night changed everything. I finally pushed back, and my brother just blew up, like I'd broken some unwritten rule. Mom and Dad just sat there, smiling like they were proud of him standing up to me. I walked out with a backpack and a cheap phone, thinking it was only temporary. Fast forward 3 months, and while they kept brushing off everything like it was just a phase, I was figuring out how to be on my own. When they reached out again, it wasn't because they missed me. It was because they needed something. Don't come back until you learn some respect. That's what my brother screamed at me, voice cracking like he was sorting through every dumb thing I'd ever done and dumping it all out at once. The way he stood there, chest puffed up, like he was king of the house, or at least, of whatever scrap of power he could flex that night. My parents? Oh, they were sitting on the couch, just waiting for the show to finish. Smirking, like this was some kind of sitcom rerun they'd seen too many damn times. When I opened my mouth to say something back, my mom didn't even flinch. They just laughed, real small, like they found all this drama hilarious. I couldn't take it. It was like everything just exploded inside me, a mix of anger and this piercing feeling that no one really cared what I felt. They were all just waiting for me to break. When I finally ran out the door, I didn't care where or how. I just had to leave. The cold night air hit me in the face, but it was better than the heat from the room, from their eyes. I slammed the door behind me. No one called my name. No one got up. They just sat there, like losing me was some expected part of the plan. It stung worse than the shouts, worse than the words that cut deep. I didn't scream back. I didn't ask for apologies or explanations. I just walked, breath shaky but steady, heart pounding not from fear but from rage. Behind me, the house went silent, like it had been holding its breath all night and was finally letting it out. I didn't look back. There was nothing left for me there, not that night. All I felt was this burning betrayal, the kind that scratches away the last bits of trust, leaving you numb and hollow at the same time. I wandered down the street, aimless but sure I wasn't coming back. The bitterness in my chest faded just enough to let the quiet settle, a sad calm I hated but couldn't shake. No phone, no plan, just me, outside a home that had stopped feeling like one long before this night. Maybe I should have seen it coming. Maybe this was just the moment everything cracked wide open, the moment they all showed me exactly where I stood. But wanting to believe things could change, that was the worst kind of fool. And still, with every step away, I felt more like I belonged nowhere at all. The silence behind me whispered in a way I couldn't ignore. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I didn't know sleep was supposed to feel so heavy when you're out here alone. The car was freezing, windows fogged up, and I was hunched over in the driver's seat, clutching my phone like it could save me. But every 5 minutes, I check it. No texts. Nothing. Just the black screen, mocking me. I kept telling myself maybe they're just busy, or maybe someone's asleep already. But the emptiness on the screen chipped away at me. Each silence felt louder in that car than anywhere I'd ever been. It was like the whole world had shut off and left me behind to figure out what the hell I was doing. I told myself I needed this, needed to get away, get some space. But out here, wrapped in the cold and nothing but the car between me and everything familiar, I realized freedom wasn't this neat, shiny thing I imagined. It was scary, really scary, especially when your phone is dead silent and you have no one checking in on you. The metal under my hand vibrated slightly with little notifications I wished were reaching me. My chest tightened with every minute stretched out between checks. It was like waiting for a lifeline that might never come. I was scared to be this alone because it made my own thoughts sound too loud. Thoughts about what I'd left behind. About the fights, the yelling, the doors slamming. About whether I'd made the right choice or just run like an idiot. It was funny how quiet everything was too. The world outside was just still. No cars, no people, just the faint hum of the night somewhere in the distance. At first, I thought I was hearing my heartbeat, loud and clumsy in my ears. But maybe it was just the silence folding in on itself. It was the first real silence I'd felt in years, and it was brutal. At some point, I realized I hadn't even locked the door. The rustle of the wind brushing against the window had me jump, then laugh at myself for being such a mess. Freedom was supposed to feel like control, right? But all it did was make me question if I could even keep myself safe here. I tried to ignore that tiny, gnawing hope that someone would text me tonight, like a dumb kid hoping for a happy ending. But I couldn't stop. I kept refreshing, just once more, just to see if maybe a message was hiding behind the blank screen. Something that said, "Are you okay?" or "Come home." Anything. But nothing ever came. The loneliness was getting to me. Not just the fact I was physically alone. It was the way that every little thought spiral I tried to suppress felt like it was expanding under my skin. I kept thinking about the last fight before I left, how angry I was, how I thought this would fix things. I needed space. Breathing room. I thought maybe if I could sit with myself in the dark, away from everyone, I'd figure out where I was going. Instead, I just felt lost. But maybe that was the point. Maybe feeling lost was the first step toward finding something different. I shivered against the cold and realized the heater was still off. I'd been so caught up in waiting for a sign. I hadn't taken care of myself. I dug for my keys to start the engine again and sat back, letting the rumble warm me a little. I kept my phone in my lap, ready to check it again, even though I was pretty sure it was pointless. I thought about all the times I'd imagined running away, how different it would be, how clean and easy. But this was real, and it was messy. I was alone in that damn car, haunted by silence, and waiting for words that might never come. And I didn't know if I wanted to hear them or not. I took whatever work I could get, mostly stuff no one else wanted. Dishwashing at a shitty diner, stacking shelves at a convenience store, cleaning offices late at night. I wasn't winning, but for the first time, every mistake was mine. No one else blamed me. No one spun stories about me being out of control or reckless. I was the only one responsible for my failures or my small successes. The mornings were the hardest. Waking up before daylight, dragging myself out of a bed that felt like a trap, knowing I had to be at work before the city even stirred. I hated it at first, the endless repetition, the feeling that I was barely scraping by, but I kept showing up. It was some kind of proof that I wasn't completely broken, even if every step forward felt like walking through mud. The family, yeah, they spread their version of what happened. Everyone heard I lost control, like those words explained everything about me, like they made me a monster or a failure. At family gatherings and in hushed conversations when they thought I wasn't listening, there was always the same line, how I couldn't handle things, how I let everything fall apart. It stung more than I wanted it to. I caught myself doubting if I really had it in me to change, or if I was just the screw-up they said I was. But inside, I wasn't that guy anymore. I wasn't the kid who broke down in front of a crowded room or crumbled under pressure. I was the one who showed up, again and again, even when it sucked. Determination felt like this grim, stubborn thing inside me, pushing me through shifts where my body begged to quit. I wasn't proud of washing the same dishes over and over, but I was proud I did it without giving up. There were times, especially late at night when I was alone, scrubbing grease off plates or stocking shelves, that I'd catch myself wondering if this was all there was for me. Was this just my new normal? It scared me how insecure I felt, how small my world had shrunk. Hell, I wasn't even sure if this kind of life could hold me, if I could hold on to it. I didn't have anything flashier or bigger to dream about yet, just a slow grind towards something I couldn't fully see. The customers at the diner didn't care who I was or what I'd been through. They just wanted their coffee and a plate, and I wanted to give it without screwing up. That simple interaction, awkward and quiet, it started to stitch me back together in a weird, slow way. I learned how to make small talk, how to put on a face that said, "I got this," even if I felt far from it. One night, after locking up the convenience store, I stood outside under a street lamp, breathing deep and trying not to cry or lose it. The cold felt steady against my face, like a reset button. In that moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, I could keep doing this. Not forever, not like this, but for now, this was mine. All the mistakes, all the slow progress. No one else's story but mine. It wasn't what I wanted once, but it was something solid, and that was new. I realized the shame I'd carried wasn't just from what I did. It came from what I thought I should be. I was nowhere near where I wanted to be, but maybe being here, broken and bruised and tired, was part of getting there. I was learning to hold myself without collapsing, even under the weight of all the things everyone else whispered about me. And in that, there was a kind of quiet pride. Not loud or flashy, but real, like a small light flickering in the dark. I locked the door behind me and shuddered a sideways glance at the street. Nobody saw me standing there in the cold, just breathing. Not the family, not the world that had written off the guy who lost control. Just me, still trying, still standing. But I knew even after all that, it wasn't over yet. The quiet felt like it was waiting. Something wasn't right, and I could feel it deep in my chest where my hope flickered. I didn't hear from him for months, not a word. Then, out of the blue, my phone buzzed one afternoon. I didn't even recognize the number at first. I picked it up, annoyed, thinking it was some wrong number or spam. It was him. Just a text. Can you help? Mom and Dad are in trouble. Bills piling up. House might get taken. I don't know where else to turn. No, sorry. No, I messed up. Just that. I stared at it for a long time. My chest tightened. The truth was, I wanted to feel something. Rage, relief, maybe a little satisfaction. But all I got was this cold, bitter shrug inside me. They taught me to obey, to follow the rules, to never step out of line. And now? They were asking nicely. I could almost hear the unspoken words behind the text. We need you. I didn't respond right away. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, heart pounding in this weird mix of anger and something softer. Pity, maybe? They never called me before, probably because they thought I would never help. The very same people who dumped their problems on my brother now begged via text from the guy they'd cut out. I thought about the last time I saw them. How they made me feel like I didn't belong, like I was a failure just by being myself. And now they came crawling to me like some messiah who could fix everything with a few bucks. The irony wasn't lost on me. After what felt like hours, I typed back. What's the amount? His reply was quick, almost desperate. At least 20 grand. Foreclosure notices everywhere. They don't even know how to start fixing this. 20 grand. My stomach turned. I knew they were in trouble. They always were. But this level of crisis? I wasn't a bank. I wasn't interested in playing savior to people who never saw me as a person worth saving. Still, something in me flickered, like a tiny ember I tried to smother. What if I said no, and the house was gone for good? What if I was the only chance they had? I hated being the fallback option, but part of me knew that if I wanted closure, I had to face this head on. I sent back, I'll loan you 10, not more. And with interest. There was a long pause before he answered. The silence made me scoff quietly. He took the deal. They'd been left drowning, and suddenly, I was the lifeline. I felt my phone vibrate again. Thank you. We'll figure everything else out. I'll call you tomorrow. He didn't sound hopeful, just resigned. I read between the lines. He needed my help, but I was still a stranger to them, a stranger who'd been kicked out of their story until now. As I put my phone down, a strange mix of pity and bitter satisfaction settled in. They never asked for forgiveness, never said they were sorry for how they treated me. They just wanted money and hoped I'd be blind enough, or bored enough, to give it. Funny, how the tables turned so quickly. I kept staring at the wall across from me. I knew this was just the beginning. They'd come to me, yes, but what they didn't realize was how much I'd changed while they were falling apart. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't going to be the same person who'd bail them out this time. The quiet after that text felt heavier than I expected. I thought it was the end of their mess, but what it really was the start of something else entirely. I met him at that little cafe we used to go to when we were kids. He said, "It's good to see you." Like it was no big deal, just to catch up over coffee. But I knew. Something was off from the moment he sat down. His hands nervously fiddled with the sugar packets, and his eyes darted around like he was waiting for something else to show up. "Hey," he started, voice way too casual. "I've been meaning to talk to you. But I wasn't here for small talk. I wanted answers." I stayed quiet, just watching him try to find his footing. He took a sip of his coffee like it was bad news. "I know things ended badly," he said, but it came out like a shrug, not real regret. "Look, I missed you. Like, I really did." His voice dropped a little, trying to sound emotional, but his eyes kept flicking down at the price list taped to the counter behind me. Like he practiced that line for a while, but couldn't actually make it stick. I hated how slick it felt, like he was trying to sell me something instead of owning up. So I just said, "I'm here. Talk." No smiles. No softness. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "You have to understand. Everything fell apart for reasons. It wasn't just me. You've got to see it from my side, too." "Yeah, bull." I knew what I saw. The excuses dripped out fast after that. How his job was killing him, how he was trying to keep the family together, how he didn't know what to do anymore. He didn't say sorry, Not once. Just this endless spinning of blame that somehow never landed on him. I really struggled, okay? He said, voice cracking a little like he wanted me to feel sorry for him. I wasn't myself. I didn't know how to handle any of it. For a minute, I almost felt sorry. But then I caught myself. That apology I wanted was missing. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. He was asking for sympathy. And I wasn't going to give him that. I get it, I said flatly. You struggled. But do you know what struggling means for the person on the other side? It doesn't just disappear. My fingers gripped the edge of the table. You left me in the dark. No heads up. No honesty. He looked down then, finally, not at the menu, but like he'd swallowed something bitter. I didn't mean to hurt you. I thought, maybe if I just fixed things on my own, it would all get better. This time, his voice was softer, but hollow under it all. No real warmth. I felt disgusted, like his words were just empty covers for the damage he'd caused. But beneath that, I wasn't just angry, I was sad. Sad for the brother I thought I knew, for what could have been if he'd just chosen differently. Still, I knew I couldn't let this turn into some therapy session for him to unload guilt and get off easy. So I said, fixing things means you have to show up. Not walk away and hope I catch up later. That's not how this works. He nodded slowly, like accepting it was a bitter truth he'd been avoiding. I was scared, he admitted finally, voice low enough only I could hear. I'm still scared. That hit me harder than I expected. Part of me wanted to reach out, to tell him it's okay, we can fix this. But another part held back because I realized how often fear had been his excuse. Not just for what happened, but for keeping me at arm's length. The coffee got cold between us. The noise in the cafe faded out. Neither of us moved. Then, without looking at me, he said, look, I don't expect you to forgive me right now. Or maybe ever. But I wanted you to know. I'm here. I nodded, but the truth was, I wasn't sure what here even meant anymore. Was it just an empty word? Or was this the start of something real? I didn't know. I thought I could close the door on him today. But the heaviness in the room said something else. It wasn't over. Not yet. The letter came a week after I'd told them I wasn't coming back. I didn't expect anything different, but reading it hit harder than I thought it would. The envelope was plain, no return address. Inside, a neatly folded sheet, the kind of letter you'd expect from distant relatives, not your parents. Even their apology came with instructions. They blamed everything on the bad influences I'd picked up since leaving. Not once did they ask me how I was or what I thought. It was all about fixing the mess I'd made. They wrote about how worried they were, how ashamed they felt that I was drifting away. But mostly, it read like a manual for how to behave and what to leave behind if I ever wanted in again. I remember sitting on my crappy apartment floor, the letter trembling a bit in my hands. The room was dark except for the streetlight bleeding through the blinds and casting lines across the page. I kept thinking, this is all they see me as. A problem to be managed. Not a kid who's struggling, just a project to fix. They didn't want me, just the version of me that didn't challenge their rules. There was this line where they said, we want our family back, but you have to leave those bad people behind. Like I was a damaged object that could be cleaned up by simple removal. They even attached dates when the house would be ready for me, all neat and planned. No room for negotiation or questions, just orders wrapped in concern. It made me realize they hadn't changed at all, only the circumstances had. Their love, if you can call it that, was conditional on conformity. I was supposed to swallow everything I'd become, everything I cared about, and just slide back into the life they planned. Any sign of independence was treated like rebellion or disease. Part of me felt this sharp resentment rising, like a knot tightening in my chest. I wanted to shout at them through the letter, tell them I was not their property. But then another part of me softened and felt almost sorry for them. How could they not see that by holding on so tight to their version of me, they were hurting themselves just as much? That mix twisted in my stomach, resentment bleeding into pity. I thought about my little sister, how she would swallow my stories and nod like they made sense. Would she end up writing a letter like that someday? Would she learn the same lesson about what it means to be family around here? I folded the letter back up the same way, feeling a strange sense of acceptance settle over me. This was who they were, and I wasn't going to find what I needed in their terms. I had to build my own life, on ground that didn't shake with their expectations. But even as I closed that chapter, a voice at the back of my head whispered that this wasn't really over. Because as much as I told myself I was done chasing their approval, I knew every new silence they left behind would weigh on me. I put the letter on the table and walked over to the window. Outside, the city buzzed on, indifferent. And in that quiet, I realized I didn't have a place that felt like home anymore. Not theirs, not mine. The question wasn't if I'd go back, but when something inside me would break completely, or if I could finally cut the cord for good. I stood on the cracked porch and stared at the peeling paint and broken windows like it was someone else's misery, not mine. It's strange how a place can hold you hostage even after you've left it behind. The house was empty now, foreclosed, locked up tight except for that one side window that was busted. I pulled the door open, and it groaned like an old man waking up, creaking into silence as I stepped inside. Everything smelled like dust and memories I didn't want to remember. The floorboards creaked underfoot, and the sunlight struggled through the dirt-smeared glass, picking out particles in the air like ghosts in the light. I took a few steps down the hall, half expecting to hear my dad's voice yelling about shoes off the carpet or some dumb rule we all had to follow. But it was just silence and that heavy weight pressing down in my chest. Then I saw it, right there, on the wall in the living room, faded and yellowed but still taped up, those damn rules. They hadn't been touched since I was a kid. I moved closer, my breath shallow, heart thumping a dull rhythm like it was trying to remind me who I was once. No running inside. Say please and thank you. Bedtime by 9. I knew every word by heart, and yet seeing them like this, forgotten and useless, felt like stepping into a forgotten time capsule of control. I let my hand hover over the notes, afraid to rip them off, afraid to keep them stuck there too. But they were just paper, fragile, powerless. The rules that used to trap me, rules that felt like chains, were just words now, meaningless without anyone to enforce them. The house didn't care if I ran inside or stayed out past bedtime anymore. No one did. The silence wasn't empty, it was freedom, and I hated and loved that all at once. For a moment, I just stood there, letting all the late nights arguing and sneaking around flood back like a weight trying to crush me. I could almost hear my mom whispering through the thin walls to be quiet, or Dad's footsteps pacing, controlling everything. But the house held none of that now. No shouting, no rules, just the unknown, something terrifying and maybe, finally, something kind of sweet. I ripped the tape at last, peeling the edges off slowly like it was some final release. The paper crumpled between my fingers, brittle and light. Walking to the front door, the weight lifted a little. The rules were still there. Only difference, no one left to follow them. I stood on the porch a moment longer, the late afternoon sun warm on my skin for the first time in years. The house looked smaller now, stripped of all its power. It wasn't a prison anymore. I realized I'd been carrying it inside me far longer than it ever held me in. But as I turned to walk away, I found myself glancing back one last time, half expecting the past to reach out, call me back in. It didn't. The silence was different now, almost patient, almost waiting, like it wasn't done with me either. I sent the money without saying a word. Found out through a mutual contact that the Jacksons had a past due bill with their electric company, one that was about to get cut off. It was the kind of debt that makes life a tiny bit harder every single day. Not a huge sum, but enough to gnaw at you constantly. I paid it anonymously, no note, no clue who it came from. Just the payment. No one ever knew. I didn't want their thanks or their questions. I wasn't trying to fix what happened between us or buy a clean slate. I wasn't even sure I wanted them to know. Helping them wasn't forgiveness. It was proof I didn't need their permission to be decent. That, even after everything, I could act on my own terms, without waiting for an apology, without sinking into bitterness. The day I transferred the money, I sat in my car outside the bank, the city noise faint behind closed windows. I thought about calling, just once, telling Michael or Ben, look, I did something. But it felt wrong. Like I'd be asking for something back, gratitude, acknowledgement, and I didn't want anything from them. It was their problem, their mess. I was just a stranger clearing a small hurdle in their path. I remember watching a mother and her kids across the street, buying groceries, one kid tugging at her sleeve. Simple stuff we all take for granted until it's not. This debt. It wouldn't change their lives overnight, but maybe it would mean one less thing to keep them awake at night. Maybe they'd have a light on tonight without worry. I wasn't made some silent hero or saint that day. It was just the way I decided to settle my own conscience. There's a difference between kindness and weakness. I wanted to find that line, and I think I did. I'd been so tangled up in anger before, thinking if I hurt them back, they'd finally see what they'd done. But this was different. There's a strange kind of peace in holding your ground quietly, not fighting fire with fire, just not letting it burn you anymore. I never expected Michael to understand, or to care, because I knew how he'd always been, proud, stubborn, unwilling to admit mistakes. Reaching out might have been seen as a weakness, even a challenge. So I kept my distance, but lent a hand anyway. That was enough. Sometimes I wonder if they ever looked around and thought, who paid that bill? Part of me doesn't want them to know. Another part hopes they figure it out, that maybe, behind all the mess, someone saw through the noise and chose to do the right thing without a nod. Maybe that would mean more than any argument, more than any fight ever could. I didn't expect to thank you. I didn't want closure. I wanted to remind myself I'm not defined by what they did or didn't do. I'm more than that. Taking that step, paying off something small to ease their burden, was quiet. It was solitary. No fanfare, no confrontation. Just me, choosing not to stay stuck in the old bitterness. And in the end, that silence felt like its own kind of answer. I thought I had left it behind entirely. But months later, when my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number, my breath caught. It was just one word: why? It was late afternoon when the message came through. I was sitting on my couch, half listening to a podcast, scrolling through my phone without care. The screen lit up with a simple text from my parents. It read, "We're proud you made it." No emojis, no follow-up, just those 5 words. I stared at it for a while, like it was some strange puzzle, something I was supposed to react to but didn't know how. The weird part was that I didn't feel anything. No relief, no anger, no relief. Just calm. Maybe it was exhaustion, or maybe I'd finally reached a place where their approval felt irrelevant. They had said 1,000 things before, loaded with conditions and silent accusations. This, though, felt like a shallow echo, as if someone had tossed a stone in a pond and expected ripples that never came. I didn't reply. I sat there, phone in my hand, feeling the weight of the fading light on my skin. It was like that message was a marker of the past I thought I'd buried, but now I'd crept back up to the surface. A strange kind of sadness settled in, a quiet recognition that the people who should have been my foundation had spent years building walls instead. And even if they were telling me they were proud now, it felt too little, too late. I thought about texting back. Maybe something polite. Maybe even a thanks. But what good would that do? I realized some silence deserves to stay earned. No words could erase the years of distance or the things left unsaid. I swiped left and deleted the message without a second thought. There was a strange sense of liberation that followed. Without the need to respond or prove anything, I felt lighter in a way I hadn't before. It wasn't a grand, triumphant feeling, just a quiet acceptance. I wasn't looking for their approval anymore. Not really. I guess a part of me always hoped for it, but I was done hoping now. The room felt empty around me. I looked up and noticed how dark it was getting outside, the kind of silence that nips at your nerves when you're alone with your thoughts. It wasn't comfortable, but it was familiar. I realized how long it had been since I felt truly free from that constant need to justify myself. To them, to myself, or anyone else. For a moment, I let my mind wander to what could have been if things were different. I tried not to dwell on it because I didn't want to open old wounds, but the ache was there anyway, the loneliness underneath all the calm. It was funny how sadness can sit quietly, almost polite, beneath everything else. I placed my phone down and leaned back. The weight wasn't gone, but it shifted. It was less like crushing pressure and more like something I was carrying willingly now, almost with a sense of control. Maybe that was the real change. Not the text they sent or didn't send later, but the part inside me that stopped needing that validation. I didn't check my phone again. I didn't want to see another message or a missed call. The moment was mine to hold or lose. And for whatever reason, I chose to hold on to this quiet calm, wrapped tightly around a sadness I didn't fight anymore and a strange, freeing kind of peace. I thought it would just end there. The last stone dropped in a still pond. But the silence that followed was heavy in a way I didn't expect. It wasn't emptiness. It was waiting. And for the first time in months, I felt that waiting wasn't about fear. It was something else. Something more complicated. I found that photo this morning, tucked behind a stack of old papers in the bottom drawer. It's the one with me, my brother, and our parents, smudged at the edges, the creases taped up like it was trying not to fall apart. I didn't want to look at it at first, but I couldn't help myself. I sat on the edge of the couch, just holding it, feeling the weight of all the years it carried. Years that felt like someone else's. I'm in a different place now. New apartment, a job that doesn't make me dread Monday mornings, friends I actually choose to spend time with. It's something I never thought I'd have. I always thought my story was going to be trapped with that family, those walls, those unspoken rules. But I'm not there anymore. Not really. I ran my fingers over the old tape on the photo, the way it tried to hold things together when maybe nothing could. The faces look familiar, but also distant, like faded memories that don't match how I remember things. I remembered the fights, the silences, the quiet expectation that I'd just obey. Do what I was told and keep my head down. That was the story for so long. But here's the thing, I left. I made that choice. I'm not the scared kid in that picture, even if part of me still feels like one sometimes. There's nothing dramatic about it. No heroics. Just a simple fact. I left to breathe. I left to be something more than what I was boxed into. I sat for a while after throwing the picture into the trash, listening to the hollow clunk it made. It wasn't anger. It wasn't relief. It was something quieter, this slow acceptance settling in. I knew I'd never really erase the past, or what happened. But carrying it like a weight, letting it define me, that was mine to choose. And I'm choosing not to. The apartment was quiet, but I didn't feel lonely. I looked out the window at the streetlights blinking on one by one. Life still moved forward, and so did I. I thought about the people around me now, folks who didn't know my history, didn't expect me to be anything I wasn't. They didn't judge, didn't push me back into some mold. That felt like real freedom. Maybe the hardest part was admitting I didn't need some big, dramatic closure to move on. No apologies, no confrontations. Just this moment. Just this breath of space where I could say, I'm okay now. It's strange how peace can feel like a quiet rebellion. I remember my parents telling me once that loyalty was everything. That family came first, no questions asked. But for me, loyalty means something different now. It means being true to myself, even if it means walking away. That's the strongest thing I've learned in all this. Not to hold on to what breaks me, but to hold tight to what builds me up. And while I'm not sure what comes next, I'm not afraid anymore. There's this small, steady hope tucked in the corner of my chest. It's not loud or flashy. It doesn't promise the world. It just whispers that maybe one day, I'll look back at this moment and know it was the one where I really started living for me. I wanted to believe that letting go meant loss, but I see now it can mean getting back what was always mine, the chance to be myself. I stood up, looked around my apartment, the quiet hum of the city outside the window, and for the first time in a long time, I felt settled. Not because everything was perfect. It's not. But because I was finally where I needed to be. Away from the past, shaped by it, but no longer controlled. They raised me to obey. I left to breathe. And that's all the revenge I'll ever need.